Hi, my name is Joe, and welcome to a series from Joe's Technology, which I'm going to call Joe's Beginner's Guide to Linux. Alright, so why are you here? I'm going to take a wild guess, and it's going to be because you've heard of Linux. You have no idea what it is. You see all these pictures of penguins all over the place, and you're starting to get nervous. Is technology passing you by? I could tell you emphatically yes. I don't mean to sound discouraging, but I only switched to Linux maybe a couple of years ago myself. I'll admit it. I will freely admit I was deeply embedded in the Windows world, and I was convinced that that was going to be the platform of choice forever and ever and ever. I could never have conceived of how amazing a platform Linux has turned out to be in terms of its versatility and applicability to everything that I could ever imagine. I know that sounds like a really grandiose statement, but as we go through this, you're going to see that that's exactly right. Part of it, and this is going to be the biggest thing. Um, if you're worried that, oh great, is this one of these penguin evangelists who's going to say, come to Linux, it will solve all your problems? I'm not one of those. This is really not about religion. If you've ever heard that term applied to Linux, oh, Linux evangelists. What it's really about is money. Linux doesn't cost money. There are companies that sell support for Linux, but you're not obligated to buy it. You can download Linux for free and run it yourself. And if you teach yourself and support it yourself, there's no reason that you have to pay a dime. With Windows computers, you see technicians that work for companies. They're not calling Microsoft for support. They learn to support it themselves. So big surprise, you can support Linux yourself too. So that's the idea here, is that we introduce Linux, we go through all the basics, we learn how all the ins and outs of the operating system itself work, all the utilities, how to perform basic day-to-day functions, and we take someone that probably didn't know anything about Linux to begin with, and at the end you have some basic proficiency with it. You should be able to set it up, run it, and use it in your own day-to-day either work or play. You'd be surprised at how much fun you can have with Linux in your free time. I wish that I had had someone to guide me through the process. Oh, I feel like I spent a lot of time with some very, let's see, how do I put it? The authors of the books that I read to learn Linux seem to have trouble communicating in English. I mean, the books are written in English, but I had no idea what a lot of the stuff was. So that's really my purpose here, is I would like to be able to share with you the type of guided tour of Linux that I never had. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so in order to get started with Linux, first we need to have Linux. Now I'm going to take a wild guess and say most of the people that are watching this video are probably coming to Linux from the Windows world. I know I did. So here we have a standard Windows 7 desktop, and I'll go ahead and open my web browser, whatever version is your particular favorite. And although you've probably asked a loaded question at one time and said, hey, what version of Linux is best, and you got back a bazillion different answers, I'd like you to go ahead and take it on faith that I'm going to go ahead and pick one that is going to be easy for beginners to use, and it's going to be called Linux Mint. You can just type that into your favorite search engine. linuxmint.com should come up as the very first search term. If anything else comes up, don't go there. This is where you want to be. Like I said, there are many different versions of Linux. However, I'd like to go ahead and use this one for our test and learning process, because I know it has really good support. They have really great drivers. You should be able to jam this into just about any computer and have it fire up. As you can see, they have various different options here that they're sitting here cycling through. We want the Linux Mint KDE, so we'll click on that. And so this is what our KDE environment will look like. It should look pretty familiar if you're coming here from Windows. One thing about KDE that you'll usually see is these gears. All the logos around KDE related stuff will usually have gears. That's just their thing. So And as you can see, we have two different versions, the 32-bit and the 64-bit versions. If you have 4 gigs of RAM or less, you want the 32-bit version. If you have more than 4 gigs of RAM for the computer that you're going to put this on, you can go ahead and click that one. And by the way, if you don't have a computer to dedicate to this, we'll also go over how you set this up in a virtual environment. So we can do it both ways. Here, let's see, I'm going to go down here to the United States. James Madison University is my particular favorite, so I'll just go ahead and click there. As you can see, I'm picking the whoops, oh, it's the 16, or that's the 32-bit. Ah, okay. See, mirrors for 32-bit. I wasn't reading. I'm going to go ahead and leave in like little bloopers and stuff that I do, so that my guess is that if it happened to me, it could probably happen to you, and I don't want my video to look phonily perfect. You know, oh, he cut out all the bloopers, you know. No, it happens to the best of us, and I don't want anyone to say, darn, am I just not smart enough for Linux? He made it look so easy, and I just can't figure this out. I might as well go back to Windows, you know. So I'll just go ahead and I'll leave all of that in for you. All right, so United States, James Madison University. Of course, based on where you are in the world, pick your country, and that way you can get a mirror that's closer to you. On the internet, distance matters. So sure, I could download it from Taiwan, but it might take a little longer because there's a lot more between me and them than from James Madison University. Okay, here we go. Linux Mint 16 KDE, the DVD version, which means it comes with all the good drivers. If I wanted to, I could burn this to a DVD disc if I had a DVD burner. Well, I do, but I'll probably just put it on a USB stick and we'll demonstrate that. And it's the 64-bit version. So now I'll say save. Now, depending on how fast your internet connection is how long this is going to take. In this case, it's saying, oh, less than an hour. So at this point, now that you're downloading whichever version is appropriate to you, like I said, 4 gigs above 4 gigs, 64-bit, 4 gigs and less, go with a 32. So whichever one that is that you need, you'll go ahead and download it, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so now I've fast forwarded into the future, and let's see, in our downloads folder, we now have Linux Mint 16 KDE DVD 64-bit ISO. Whew, isn't that a mouthful? ISO, if you're not familiar with it, is a file standard that allows you to record CD and DVD discs from these files. So this file would basically be used as a cookie cutter template to stamp out discs. And in this case, the disc is the Linux Mint 16 KDE version in DVD format. That's why we have a picture of a document with a pretty disc. In the old days, burning the disk would have been the way to go for transferring masses of data. But now we have USB sticks. And in fact, USB sticks are very cheap. They don't cost hardly anything. In many cases, you can even get them for free at various different events. So how do we turn our ISO image into a bootable USB? So first is to go to our favorite search engine and search for Pendrive Linux. This will take you to pendrivelinux.com, or if you prefer, you can type it directly. Be aware that there are evil hackers whose only goal in life is to trick you and to cause you grief, and they will register web names that are just one letter off of these. That's why I say, go to a search engine, type it in, make sure that you're going to the right place. Alright, so as you can see, we have a couple of different versions. Personally, I enjoy the Universal USB installer. Notice it's a followed link. I've been there before, so that's what we'll go ahead and we'll demonstrate. And so it gives us some basic instructions, and it's all nonsense. We'll click download and say save, and the file is on its way. Oh, and the file is here. This file is a little over a meg, so depending on your connection speed, it can come in pretty darn quick. So here we have the, oh, now I'm clicking on it. You can't see this part, but it's prompting me for my administrator password. It's always good to have a good, strong administrator password. So here we have the Universal USB installer. It comes with a little license agreement. blah blah blah, we're not responsible, this is free, you knew it when you got it, we don't certify that it does anything, use it at your own risk, etc. Lawyers. The world was so much easier before lawyers. Alright, so now we have to tell it what version of Linux we would like to set up for. And as you can see, it has quite a few. However, Linux Mint is one of the most popular, so it's right up here near the top. And both 32-bit, 64-bit edition, doesn't matter. So we just click on Linux Mint. Now it's going to search for a file name with a mask. Notice that this mask says, oh, I'm going to look for any program that starts with Linux Mint. Then there's asterisk. Blech. I'm a little tongue-tied today. Asterisk is a wildcard. It basically says Linux Mint at the beginning, and doesn't matter what it has for a file name or however many characters after that, and it ends in ISO. So when it looks in the directory, ta-da, sure enough, if there were a whole bunch of files here, it would only show me the ones that start with Linux Mint and end in ISO for me to choose. I only have one, so even though the directory does have that universal USB installer, the mask keeps it from showing up. Makes it easier to pick the right thing, because it masks out anything that's not Linux Mint. Alright, so now we have to pick our USB drive. And as you can see, we have a USB drive available. And there's only one in there. Now, if for whatever reason you had a USB drive connected and you knew it was there, but it wasn't showing up, you could say show all drives. But notice this thing, it says use with caution, and it's all in big capital letters. The reason is that now it's on you. All the drives are visible, and you can pick any one of them, but whichever one you pick is going to get formatted and set up with thing. This is not the way to install Linux, trust me. So if you were thinking, well, maybe I could use the universal USB installer to bypass the Linux installation, don't do it. That's not what it's for. It's just in case your drive wasn't detected correctly. I've never seen it not be correctly detected. By the way, you'll notice that it's showing 3 gigs. There's actually some data that's already on there. It's actually a 4 gig stick. So I'm going to click Format, and it'll go ahead and format as FAT32. It's a nice universal, doesn't have any security, file format, so it'll be easy to address that amount of memory using FAT32. Now here's an optional step which you can set, and I'll go ahead and I'll set it in mine just as a demonstration. We can store changes, so if we wanted to, we could go around using this USB stick as if it was a portable workstation. I mean, the only thing that a computer needs is to be able to operate its programs and be able to save files. Now, as a bootable USB, you already have something that can run around and boot computers and be able to run. And we'll see that here in a moment. But if you set this, now you can save files too. So say, for example, I go to the library and the library only has Windows. And in fact, I've actually seen this done, where there was a guy and he was traveling the country and he likes to talk to his girlfriend on Skype. But he doesn't have his own computer. So he would go to libraries. He would stick his USB stick in there, reboot the computer. It already had Skype installed on it. Reboot to Linux, call up Skype, do his phone calls in the library, then pull his stick out when he was done, and then the computer went back to its happy little Windows environment. It made no changes to the hard drive. It was a really nifty little thing. Libraries didn't like it. They get a little nervous when they see people. It looked to them like he was installing software, but he wasn't. It's hard to explain it to them. So I'll go ahead and I will set persistent changes. Since we know that our Linux disk only takes 1.3 gigs, I don't know if you remember that, but that's what it said that the install was. That means there's plenty of space available for setting persistent changes. So I'll set aside 1 gig for persistent changes. And now it will go ahead and format that USB stick for me, and it will set it up with space for persistent changes with Linux, Mint KDE. Oh, you know what? This popped off the screen. Here we go. So here's what you'll see. It'll take some time to extract it after formatting the drive and setting everything up. Now this part is probably about as much fun as watching paint dry, so I'll go ahead and I'll fast forward this part. But expect to be sitting here 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the speed of your computer, and more importantly, on the speed of your USB. Now, if you have a USB 3.0 flash drive, this could be a pretty quick process because it's just a matter of how fast can you transfer, roughly a gig and a half through a USB port, well, plus the extraction process. So if you're using a Celeron or an i3 processor or one of the little tiny AMD ones, because AMD is fantastic for making inexpensive processors that work. They're just not as powerful as their Intel counterparts that cost a whole lot more. But price for performance, I don't mean to go off on this tangent, but wow, AMD chips are really great for giving you bang for the buck. If you just need to get up and running, AMD is great. If you have oodles of cash and you need outrageous performance, Intel. Yeah. Oh yeah, let's go ahead and we'll fast forward this part. Okay, it looks like our installation onto our USB stick is just about completed. Our remaining time here will be indicated. As I said, the amount of time varies based on how powerful your computer is and how fast your ports and how fast the USB stick that you chose is. So mine's just a cheapo. I don't think I really spent anything on this USB stick at all. So it should work okay with just about anything you can find. Most of the setup is basically just extracting everything to be able to get it onto the disk, and after that I think this setup is going to go relatively quickly. Let's see. It's a little deceptive. I mean, you see this thing and it's like, well, I've got this little tiny little progress bar, but watch this thing shoot across as soon as the extraction process is completed. That's why I fired the camera back up here. I wanted you to be able to see this. There we go. The extraction process is done, and now it's time to configure the files. And watch this thing go across here. Oh, the one nice thing about Linux Mint, and this is something this is just a pet peeve of mine that I happen to like, is you notice when it said 32-bit and 64-bit, there's not a distinction between AMD 64 and Intel 64. Both of the big manufacturers, Intel and AMD, actually have their own unique architectures. They don't, copyrights and trademarks and all that other good stuff. They have to develop their own independently. So AMD 64 software doesn't run on Intel 64 chips, and vice versa. So Mint just said, what the heck, we're all one big happy family. If it's 64-bit, we'll just include it in that edition. So that's one of the reasons why I recommend Mint. They've got everything in there. You just pick 64-bit and you're ready to run. Let's see, and it's just about finished. I don't know that I put my email address in these things. I would imagine this guy gets a lot of email, provided he hasn't been frustrated into shutting that address down by this point. I know this part is probably not all that exciting, but I wanted to include it simply so you weren't surprised by how long something took or thought that you did something different or wrong. Um, oh, that's what's taking. Oh, I'm being silly. Creating the persistent file. Progress will not move until finished. Please, I'm not even reading this thing. If you didn't choose the optional creation of the persistent file as I did, you won't have to sit through this step. The reason that I put that in there, and here, as a matter of fact, I'll throw it up so you can see it. Recently here on YouTube, someone asked me about that. As a matter of fact, I have another video that demonstrates the Cinnamon edition. Oops, you know what, here, let's go ahead and pause that. And one fellow was asking me, he said, hey, this is great, but can I use it to save my files on there if I made it? I said, sure, you can use it with the persistent option, which I did not demonstrate in the video. And I thought, you know what, as a courtesy, because I always appreciate feedback, good and bad. So, if you want, if you guys put stuff in there, I will be reading it. And I wanted to be able to demonstrate for this fellow the persistent file system that I didn't put in previously. Oh, here we go. And the persistent file has been created. And so here we go. 100%. Ta-da! Thanks for using blah blah blah, and we're just about done. So now I have a USB stick that is both bootable and I can save files to it. So it's basically a little portable workstation in my pocket. Any computer that is x86 64-bit compatible will be able to run this. And that's that. I have a bootable USB. So now I can go ahead and put this into a computer that I've decided that I want to install Linux on. Okay, now that we have our bootable USB drive, now it's time to put it onto a computer. Now, if you're lucky, you have an extra computer laying around, or that you can get your hands on, that nobody wants anymore and nobody cares about. This is the ideal candidate for Linux. You stick it in the USB drive, set the computer to boot from USB, tell Linux it's okay to go ahead and wipe the drive and just put itself all over the place and take over the machine, and within a few minutes you'll have a computer that you can use to learn on. Okay, what if you only have one computer and that one computer runs Windows? So you can't afford to just wipe out Windows. It still has the things that you work with every day on it. You want to learn Linux, but you don't have a spare machine. For that, I would recommend what's called a virtual machine. Whoops, I got to type it correctly. VirtualBox is probably one of the most popular virtualization systems in the world. If you don't know what a VM is, don't worry. Here, we'll go over it. VirtualBox was originally created by Sun Microsystems, which got bought out by Oracle, sadly. But thankfully, VirtualBox doesn't conflict with anything that Oracle already made, so they continue to have it out here. So I can go to virtualbox.org. I can click on Downloads. As you can see, they have various different versions, and the platform we want in this case is for Windows. And so this is what I'll demonstrate now. So I click on that I want the x86 or 64-bit version of Windows. Save to file. It'll take a few minutes to arrive. It's not a very big file. As you can see, it's only about 100 megs. So depending on your connection speed, this could be longer or shorter for you. Now, in my case, although I'm downloading it, that was just a demonstration. I actually have VirtualBox installed already. In fact, that was how I learned about Linux over the years. Well, big whopping 2 years. As you can see, I tried out lots of different things in order to get myself started. In fact, I've deleted half of the ones that I have tried in order to get familiar with them. So once you've clicked on the install and gone through the steps, you'll have VirtualBox up and running, except your section here will be blank. So we want to create a virtual machine. So here I'll demonstrate how. We'll go to New, and in this case I'll just call it Linux Mint 16 KDE. And as you can see, they have lots of different types. So I'll just say Linux. Which type of Linux did you want? Basically, it wants to know, is this 64-bit or 32-bit? Linux Mint is an Ubuntu derivative. That means that there's a version of Linux called Ubuntu, and Linux Mint takes all the code that Ubuntu made and then changes it. Why would they do that? Well, Mint is a little bit friendlier, nicer, looks better, is a little easier to run right out of the box than Ubuntu is. And that extra bit of making the operating system friendly is why we're using it for our example now. So we'll just say Ubuntu is 64-bit and allocate some memory. In my case, I like to be generous so that it can go crazy. You probably don't need this much, but this is just me wanting to be generous to Linux, so I'll give mine 8 gigs. And I'll say create a virtual machine, take all the defaults. You may or may not have all of these options depending on how yours is set up. Again, defaults dynamically allocated. By default, it offers 8 gigabytes of space. I prefer to give it 50. That's just me. The operating system itself, I think, will fit in about 5 or 6. So I thought it would be nicer to give it more than 2 gigs of space to play with. So 50 gigs should be fine. Okay, so now I have my profile created. Notice it says powered off. Now I'm going to right click it, choose settings, because there are a couple little pet peeves of mine that I like to set. It's up to you whether or not you do. I don't use this. Well, you know what, I'll go ahead and I'll leave that on so that you can see it. Normally I turn that off. It's just a little in-screen menu. Here, I'll give it more virtual processors. All of that is set. Oh, by the way, let's see, where was it? I forgot. There's one step that you don't see here. With when you fire this up, you may get a message that says virtualization is not enabled for your processor. By default, there are virtualization features for CPUs that by default many manufacturers do not have turned on because, well, shucky darn, you know, what kind of normal people run virtualization at home? Well, people like me, and in this case, people like you, if you plan to run it this way. So you may have to restart your computer. You would hit delete or F2 or whatever the key is to access the BIOS, the basic input-output system for your computer. You'll have to go through there. The menus are always different, so I mean I could show you mine, but mine are unique to, in my case, the vendor for my BIOS is Gigabyte. So Gigabyte has their own idea for how a BIOS should look. Every other manufacturer's idea is going to be different. So you would just basically look for something that says, you know, processor or central processing unit or CPU, and there will be a little check mark that says virtualization features, and it'll say disabled or off or no, and you'll flip it to on or yes or, you know, use or, you know, whatever it is that they have as a choice in order to be able to activate this, because those features in the CPU are what make this, what you're about to see, possible. And okay, so now that we have the virtualization turned on, oh, I always like to use the absolute pointing device. It just shows, I mean, it allows me to point and have less problems. Let's see, 4 CPUs, they're just virtual. I give it a little bit of video memory, and I like to enable 3D acceleration just so that it runs a little bit better. For storage, let's see here, we'll go and now, although we've created a USB stick, we can actually run this directly from the ISO. So if you're planning on running this as a virtual machine in Oracle VirtualBox, you probably didn't have to create a USB stick, but it's good practice. Yeah, when your friends ask you, and they will, when they start to hear, oh wow, you started Linux, could you tell me more about it? Or, better yet, they say, would you like to help me? I've got this old laptop, it doesn't, you know, it's corrupt. I'd like to try Linux out on it. And you go over, bring that USB stick with you. Okay, so I selected my media. I said that I wanted the, you know, just in case it didn't pop up for you, you know, you would browse to the directory, you'd pick the file, and then you would see it appear here saying, okay, that's going to be what I boot off of as my virtual disk. And this is able to read that ISO file as if it was a real CD, so you don't even have to burn a disk in order for this to work. Audio is good, network is good, USB is good, so I click OK. Alright, so everything is there, and it's saved, and it's ready to go. So now, with VirtualBox installed, with our CPU features enabled to be able to allow it to run, we can click Start. So the Oracle VM comes up and immediately boots our ISO image. As a matter of fact, here I'll switch this here to full screen. This is that little bar that I was going to turn off that I usually don't use, but if you needed to, you could. As you can see, all the little settings that we saw in the menu follow us here. It shows what we're running, and we can change things. Oh, and then of course, you know, your minimize, maximize, they follow you back and forth so that you could switch in and out of full screen. So this is the best way to learn if you only have one computer and you can't dedicate a machine to Linux. Okay, so now we have a full Linux desktop. And remember, I was telling you that with the USB stick you could utilize this as a portable workstation. So this is basically an example of that. So here we'll take a look and see. Let's see, where is it? Oh, whoops. I think I went to the wrong place. Come on, computer. Don't be grumpy. There we go. Where do they put it? It is... there we go, the KDE Info Center. Now, if you're a Windows user, and like I said, this probably looks pretty familiar. I mean, you have nice little things, they're pretty well organized. This should be making you feel better already, because this makes sense. You know, the KDE environment is really friendly and it's widely used. Here's the characteristic gear that I was talking about earlier. You'll see that follow through, and a lot of KDE programs also, to indicate that they were made for the KDE environment, their names will start with a K. Say for example, I use Notepad a lot when I'm over in the Microsoft world. So let's see, where do they put? Oh, you know, it's probably under utilities. I forget. Let's see, here we go, utilities, and see, here's my personal favorite text editor in the KDE environment, which is Kate. Yes, I know, there's like, you know, a bazillion different text editors, but this is just the quick, you know, type something really fast, you know, and get things out. So this, if you're coming from Windows, this would be a counterpart to Notepad. You know, no spell checking or anything like that. It's just great for quick notes, and there are many cases in which I'd be happy to use them. So here's all the virtual memory that the computer sees. As far as this virtual machine is concerned, even though I'm running this on top of Windows, it thinks it's a real computer, and it will behave and operate just like a real Linux computer would. It could really care less that it's I've just sliced off a piece of the computer's memory. This is why, you know, we had to turn this virtualization feature on in the BIOS, and as you can see, it runs pretty good. I mean, just as if it's a real actual system. The difference is that I haven't installed anything yet, so this is all running. And see, I can hit the Linux Mint site. I can browse the web. I can do everything here as if I was running on a regular computer. Oh, by the way, this is just a little caveat. If you were going to go to a website, I'm not going to say that you would, but if you're going to go to a website where you were concerned that perhaps there might be some security issue with that website, where it had hostile code that was waiting to jump out at you and attack your system, one really way to be able to browse sites that might be hazardous but might have something that you would like to see, I can't imagine what kind of site that would be with a virtual machine like this. So here we have nothing installed. We're running off of an ISO. We could see everything that we want to in the web browser and connect to the web, but anything that runs in this web browser will be gone the moment this virtual machine is rebooted, because there's nothing saved. Plus, Linux has better security than the Windows platform it's running on top of. So it's safer to actually execute those websites in here. Alright, enough about that. So how do we install? Well, as you can see, it's a pretty naked desktop, except for, oh, look at this, we have one little button that says Install Linux. Now, if you ever heard from someone, oh, you know, Linux is so hard, you'll never figure it out. Next time you hear that, you can laugh at them. You're going to see this is pretty easy. Okay, well, I clicked on the icon that said install Linux, and it says language English. Well, yes, as a matter of fact, English is my default language. But if it wasn't, well, here I'll click back. This is something that I really enjoy about Linux. I mean, you just go nuts. And this is why this is all over the world. People have contributed to change it into all these different languages. This is all free. It doesn't cost a dime. If I was going to set up a library or a school or a business and I needed dozens and dozens and dozens of computers, Linux is what I'd be using. For one thing, no licensing fees. Ta-da! Okay. Oh, I guess it takes more space than I thought. It says must have at least 8.4 gigabytes available drive space. So you saw the initial 8 gigs that Oracle VirtualBox offered us for this installation would not have cut it. So it's a good idea to always resize it and make it bigger. Alright, so here we'll go ahead and we'll continue. Here it says guided, use entire disk. There are many ways to set up Linux. If you wanted to, you can manually write out all these partitions. Like I said, you know, if you're a beginner and you're watching this, you probably don't want to deal with that. So leave it on the default, which is guided, and just say install now. Go crazy, Linux. You're on your own virtual machine. You can do whatever you want. By the way, this install procedure is identical if you happen to be sticking a USB into an empty hard drive. So this is the same procedure we would do even if we were installing to a physical computer versus a virtual computer. The only difference is there'd be no steps for Oracle VirtualBox. Here we can pick any time zone we want, so you know, here let's just randomly pick a time zone. You know what, here I'll make this one Mountain Time. And oh, it's Canada time. I didn't know that they had Canada time. I don't know, I kind of like Denver. Here, let's see, is that Denver? Oh, that's Phoenix. Well, you know, Phoenix doesn't observe daylight savings time, so no, we'll leave it on. We'll leave it on Denver. Denver's a good one for the Mountain Time Zone. So now I'll click continue, and you can pick whatever is appropriate for you. Again, United States English. You know, here's our layout for our keyboard. There are more than one kind of keyboard layouts. You know what? Here, let's just be fun. I've never seen a Vietnamese keyboard, and now I have. Or a Ukrainian. Let's see. Or Thai. I'm glad I don't have to use that keyboard. Nope, I'll just stick with English, United States. I think it's a little bit easier. There we go. So, I can choose my keyboard layout based on my country. Again, it's great because all this is free. My name, I'll say Joe. Choose a password. Choose something good. Okay, so enter the same password twice so that it can be checked for errors. It didn't squawk, so I guess that means it liked it. What is my computer's name? My computer's name is going to be Bob. You can make your computer name whatever you want. I'll just call him Bob. Okay, welcome to Linux Mint. And it was installing the files while I was putting in my configuration information. And should be just about done. I guess we still have a little bit to go. Oh, it's time for the slideshow. Ta-da! Included software, Firefox, Flash, Java. These things are always kind of fun. The various different, and Microsoft does this too, and they'll have a little slideshow extolling how great they are. Well, the good thing, though, is that in the case of Linux Mint, the stuff that they're talking about is pretty honest. They tell you the features they come with and what you can look forward to, so that you're not just staring at a progress bar while this stuff's installing. Some other Linux variants actually will play little movies or a song while they're doing their installation. Zorin in particular. Turn your speakers down when you're installing Zorin, by the way. Zorin has a nice little welcome music, but boy, it can be loud. Ouch. I kind of like a nice silent installation. That way I can listen to my own music while I'm installing something. Oh, by the way, because we're doing this specifically with Linux Mint, you see it mentioning things like Amarok and other good stuff. I plan to go over all of the software that's included with Linux Mint 16, just so that you have like a little walkthrough of all these things. I mean, you'll see reviews online about, pardon me, different Linux installations, and they'll tell you, well, it comes with all these great things, but then they don't tell you what they are. So if you're the new user, it's like, well, shoot, I've never even heard of this stuff. It's great to tell me it comes with VLC. What is that? Well, that'll be the part of the purpose of this series, is as we become familiar with Linux, we're also becoming familiar with this distro. Simply because this is an example of, well, for one thing, many of these applications are found in multiple distributions of Linux. So whether you had Red Hat Linux or Ubuntu Linux, or in this case Linux Mint, or Zorin, or any of these others, many of them will include the default packages that you see included here. Mint went out of their way to make sure that all the best middle of the road stuff that you might see all over the place was included, and that's one of the things that I really like about them. So as you learn these here, you'd be able to utilize them on other Linux distributions very easily. So we'll try to cover them all. I heard a dog barking, but I don't have a dog. As long as it's not in my house. I don't know. Eventually I'll get a dog, but it'll probably run on batteries. I was more of an animal person before I found out that animals like to chew cables. There we go. All right. As you can see now, we have the option to continue testing or to restart. I'm going to say continue testing, and I'll show you why. I'm going to go here, I'm going to say leave, shut down. Again, as you can see, these are nice big bright icons. Whether you come from Windows or Macintosh, these should be very, very obvious. This is an international standard for power, and red is always the for negative, bad, turn off, you know. So anyone should be able to look at that and get exactly what the intent was. So here I've told the operating system to turn off, and it's shutting down the virtual machine. It'll take a little moment, and it'll finish its power off sequence. Come on, Mint. Here, I'll go ahead and take us out of full screen mode. Seems to be taking a while to shut down. I was going to say, since we were running it off of an ISO image, and everything that's in memory is just the live CD, it's not the actual install yet, there's nothing for it to save. So normally this would be scary in Windows, where you just turn it off, and I'll say just power off the machine. But in Mint, it doesn't care. It's not a real computer. It was running off of a CD image. There's nothing to lose by turning it off forcibly. Now that I've set it up and everything is there, I can go here to the storage and just say choose the host drive. That means I'm dropping that ISO image, and so the next time it boots, it'll boot off of the hard drive image that I've installed. Well, in the virtual machine, I should say. So now it no longer has access to that ISO image, and as you see the nice Linux Mint logo with the KDE gears start to appear, that means we did it right. And here we go. Here is the login screen for Linux Mint 16. Oh, since I put my name as Joe and it automatically made a username Joe, that's why it says JoJo. One's a full name and one's a username, but I didn't bother to put my last name. Okay, here we go. It takes just a second. Comes up with a nice little welcome screen. So it tells us about the features, has a little guide, some tutorials, there's a chat room, software, and all kinds of other good stuff. So if you'd like, you can go through all of these. And as a matter of fact, maybe we should go ahead and we'll do that. But I'm going to go ahead and stop this video here, and we'll leave that for lesson 2. Oh, by the way, if you think that this is going to be a good video series and that this will be something that you like, share it with your friends. And please be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good day.